Good morning, everybody. We do have quorum, and I will call the fourth meeting of the Scarborough Community Council in order. Welcome to all members of the Community Council and, of course, to the members of the public and the media. We acknowledge the land that we're meeting on is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by the Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed by the multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflicts of Interest Code? If so, please indicate the item, numbers, and the nature of the interest. Okay. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the Scarborough Community Council meeting of February 14th, 2019? Councilor McGillivray, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Let's proceed with the rundown of the agenda. Members, if you wish to hold an item, please state the name, your name, and say hold. For items with speakers, I will hold these items. SC 4.1. Okay. Superb. In favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 4.2, request for fence exemption, side yard 22 Littleleaf Drive. Councillor Lai, it's a timed item. Oh, okay, fine. Yep, okay, superb. SC 4.3, 743 Warden Avenue, Block 19, Parts 22, 25, 27 to 29, and Block 25, Parts 30 to 40, Common Elements, Condominium, and 743 Warden Avenue, Block 19, Parts 1 to 21, 23, 24, 26, and 35 to 44. Part lot control exemption application, final report.
I will move staff recommendations.
Thank you. In favor?
Point of order.
It's timed for 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 o'clock, so we'll hold it.
Oh, it's timed? Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you want to hold it?
I'll hold it.
Okay, superb.
Thank you, Councillor.
SC 4.4, 1548 Kingston Road, Common Elements Condominium Application, final report. This is time for 10 a.m. Councillor?
I will hold it for that time.
SC 4.5. Okay, this is 6461 Steeles Avenue East, zoning amendment application, final report. It's a tied item, 10 a.m. Councilor, would you hold it? Yep. Okay. SC 4.6, 2746 to 2800 Kingston Road, zoning amendment application, preliminary report.
I'll move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Carried. SC 4.7, 3050 Pharmacy Zoning Amendment Application Preliminary. I'll hold. SC 4.8, we do have speakers. This is 20, 40, 50, 70, 80, and 100 Cowdrey Court Zoning Amendment and Draft Plan of Subdivision Application Preliminary Report. I'll hold. SC 4.9, 2075 Kennedy Road, 26 and 50 Village Green Square, zoning bylaw. I'll hold. SC 4.10, 6480 to 6484 Kingston Road, zoning amendment, draft plan, subdivision application, request for direction report. Okay. In favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 4.11, always stop control, Bridgemount and Hollis Avenue.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 4.12, always stop control, review Presley Avenue and Bernadale Crescent.
I would like to refer this back to staff for further consideration, if I could. So I'm referring the item back to staff,
Okay,
on their recommendation, by the way.
okay, all right. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 4.13, traffic control signal St. Clair Avenue and North Woodrow Boulevard.
Oh, I will move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. U-turn prohibition Boros Hall Boulevard. SC 4.14. I'll hold and for Councilor Lai. Okay, SC 4.15. U-turn prohibition Kingston Road at Gilwood Parkway, Cromwell Road.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 4.16, standing prohibition Tanis Crescent.
There's a speaker, hold.
Okay, we'll hold on your names, Councilor. SC 4.17, stopping prohibition Kingston Road.
I'll move it.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. SC 4.18, endorsement of an event of liquor licensing purposes. You move the item. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. See 4.1.
4.1 stuff.
Okay, hold on. Which one are we holding? 4.2.
4.2. Statutory.
Okay. SC 4.2, request for fence exemption, side yard, 22 Littlefield Drive. We have speakers. Drajika Wise. Please come on down. Evelyn Bauman, Gorvada Petrovich, and Adam Wise. Okay, Pauline Platt, thank you. And we also have another speaker, Pauline Platt. Ma'am, you've got 5 minutes. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. I know it's short time, just to say my name first and last, that would be. But my name is Mrs. Weiss again. I live in 22 Littleleaf over 4 years, never had an issue with anybody. And one thing, they made the issue about the property, which I have picture. They put the camera on windows of my living room, dining room. She asked me what kind of curtains, orange, I have in my bathroom. Between that window and my bathroom, it's a bathtub. So how did she go inside? I got a picture. I block all those entering for her to come in. They verbally abusing me. They bullying me. They know I have sick husband who is in the bed, and they know that they can work things with us. The fence was put there for my own protection, to protect my privacy of my window, of my property that I'm paying taxes, and I'm not able to walk on it freely, not to have an apple at the back when I'm cutting the grass. And when I brought the apple to him and put it on the fence, he said to me, "Betch, what can you do? You don't have a camera. What can you do? Prove it." I got the picture. Anybody can see those pictures that I have. They really abused me. They had an issue with the other neighbor on the other side of our property, on their property. They didn't talk to her. She sold the house, she moved out. They turned on us. What do they want? Before her, there was 2 owners in that house. We never discussed any issue about the property till her husband said to me, "Betch, you are on my property." I called survey, they divide the property. Guess what? They are sitting on my property 1 meter from the zone. And they're getting angry every day. They use the verbal abuse as us, saying bad things, all kind of things, which is wrong always. I'm old, I'm 72, my husband is 82. We need to live there in peace for the rest of the life. This is the house for us, first house. We worked so hard, and I don't know what to say. This fence has to stay. I got a picture of the fence. Why did they want a fence to be moved? Just because they want to exit on my property. I understand they have to look after their own privacy, but not mine. I'm paying taxes. They don't have to be on my air conditioner with their camera or anything. They don't have to. And if anybody would like to see the picture, they always threaten me. As soon as I walk out, here I am. I'm taping you. I'm watching you. I'm scared to come out since October last month. If I do anything, I just give them back what they deserve. This is the fence I made, see? And this is the picture that they had, this is the part that I left, and they always sit there. Look at how she sits with the camera. They're driving me nuts. They're throwing all kind of garbage on my property, and I got a picture of those. They cut their cedars, they dump in my property, but they forgot to take a river that they had on their property, on that cedar. They bullying me constantly, no matter what I'm doing. They know everything is on that house on my back because my husband cannot move. And who do I have? Myself to keep up with his wishes, to stay in the house till he died. First they play games with a downpipe, then after they start throwing stuff. Eggs on my property, socks from her husband. My husband doesn't have that size socks. I put them back on the fence so the camera can see on my fence that they had to stop doing childish things. I'm not the first one. I never had a problem with nobody. I live in that neighborhood since 1978, 40 plus years, till they arrived, third owner of that home. They threw the apple, they threw the leaves from the garden, potato, all kind of stuff. I'm just like a vacuum cleaner going after her. And she said, prove it. What can you do?
I'll give you 10 seconds to wrap up.
I wanted that fence to stay as it is for my own protection, and I wanted that fence to be there for them not to point on my windows to see me in the kitchen nude.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on a second. Any questions? Sure. Counselor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, good morning, ma'am.
Could I leave some picture to anybody to check
No,
it?
I'm going to ask you some questions. Would you mind just staying there? Good
Okay,
morning.
thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How long has the fence been in place?
When they complain about the property,
No, how long has the fence been in place? When did you and your husband install that fence?
that fence was recently made there when we had it 2 years ago, strong wind. The old fence from the year when we moved in, it was tears down. So I put only one that is facing the street, brand new wood. It's just giving a new look for the whole street.
So the fence was...
It's new, it's new. But the other side,
Ma'am, just listen for a moment. I'm just trying to get some clarification. So I understand you're very, upset about it. I get that, right? But I just wanted to understand. So you replaced the old fence with this new fence that is beyond the regulation height. Is that correct?
it's more inside.
Ma'am,
It's
please.
not-
Ma'am, the fence is higher than what you had before. Is that correct?
Now that I remember, they claim,
it-
especially the one that they want to take it from this side. If you can see the picture, then you will know what I'm talking about.
Ma'am, I just want to know whether or not the fence that you have today was the same height as the fence that blew down, or...
I never had a fence there before. I just
You
put
didn't
it.
have a fence. This
I
is
just
brand
put
new.
it now because she was bullying me from that side. and I closed that exit. That's the reason. One side is fence that I closed that area. They see, as soon as I come out, they see me probably on their camera. They are after me.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, ma'am, appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Next speaker is Evelyn Bauman. You got 5 minutes, ma'am.
Yes, good morning, council.
Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say that I object to the height of the fence that's on the side because it actually interferes with my vision. It looks very industrial, and the old fence is still up. The new one is against the old fence, and it's too high.
That's it?
Yeah, I have 2 pictures that I would like to submit so you can see what the fence looks like.
Would we assist her, please?
Yeah, that's the new fence against the old. Thank you.
That's it, ma'am. Anything else you want to say?
No, that's all.
Okay. Any questions of the deputant? Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate it. Gorvada Petrovich. Come on down, please. Ma'am, you got 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being here today. Dragica White is my stepmom, and I've been in this country. I'm lucky to be here. I'm coming from Europe, where everybody gets along. Neighbors always support each other and help each other in the needs. When my parents was good enough with the neighbors, everything was fine and dandy. And then when everything went wrong, when the neighbors decide they didn't like it how much my parents cut the grass. I've been here for 20 years. I watch my mother crying nonstop. I've been driving my mother from the police stations to file the claim. I watch my mother taking a medication and falling asleep, being so stressed out. And it's not something that a child can watch. My parents live in that house. My dad is very sick. He barely walks some days. And to be honest, it's not acceptable for somebody in that age to go through this stage. I personally went to police officers in the station with my parents. My mom told me that her neighbor even told her that she saw her in her underwear in the house. They're not comfortable with the cameras there in their property. I asked several times police officers to please talk to them, to just make sure that they leave them alone. They're old people. My dad would like to die in that house. I personally believe that we should all get along with each other. It's very sad for me to watch my mother going what she's going. I've been in this building more than I've been in every other building. I went through their damage the fence to opening the fence, and I spoke with several other people, and every time we called 311, after they call on my parents, I always come here and I said, please help me find a piece. I need to get a piece so my parents can, whatever left time is for them to be there and have a rest till the end of the time. It's not nice that I call my mom after work and my mom is crying nonstop. She is very old. She worked very hard in her life. Her house is her pride. Her gardens is her pride. My mom won the best prize in the garden. My dad worked so hard in this country. He does not want to leave the home. If it's up to me, I will move my parents long time ago. I need you to think about your parents for the minute and see what you can go through. I met here gentleman so many times named David. Amazing person, always try to help us out. And I always say, whatever the lie is, but right now I'm asking you for a huge favor. This cannot happen. My parents, they're not even comfortable in their own house, never mind in their garden. My mom have a gorgeous garden. She does not get out anymore. She does not enjoy her outside. I honestly just want to ask you, I don't need the 5 minutes, I'm begging you. They need to keep the fence up. My mom blocked all her windows in the house on the neighbor side. They are not comfortable. If you walk now in my house of my parents, there are curtains like dark everywhere. You get up in the morning, you want to have your morning coffee and enjoy your day in your home, in your comfort zone. You nonstop feel like somebody is watching you. She does not to be threatened nonstop when she get out. She does not to need to worry when she goes to help cleaning up the garden with her husband or just by herself, which she's doing now in the past 3 years because my dad is very ill. She needs to enjoy whatever left time she have. She needs to enjoy that, just like all of us we do. I live in the condominium. I don't have to do those stuff. But when I see my mom struggling just getting out in her garden and always being worried, are they watching her? And are they going to say something? If she cleans, doesn't matter. If she's outside just to pick up the mail, I don't know, do they watch her on the camera? But I know my mom all the time when I call her, she'll be like, oh my God, they call me the names. They threw the fruits at me. I cannot even cut my grass. I cannot even do my regular stuff in my home. I just want to know, is it that the life? I'm living in Canada. I moved here in 1999 after bombing in Serbia. I went through so much in my life. And to watch just my parents, what they're going through, it's sad. We all came here for better
10
future.
seconds, please wrap up.
That's all I can say. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate.
Thank you. Any questions of the deputant? All right, ma'am. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Adam Wise. Sir, you got 5 minutes.
Thank you. I got some pictures like you see later on. It's pretty convenient that she picked the most ugliest picture of the fence. The fence is an only eyesore to her because she can't see into my mom's dining room. That's it. That's the reason that we're not asking for 100 feet of fence. It's 8 feet of fence, so it blocks 2 cameras, and it also blocks her peeling in. Like I said, my mom's been living in this house for 40 years with my dad. She enjoys doing the gardening, and she's got an award from Raymond Chow. He had an award for nicest front yard. She enjoys maintaining and gardening. She has to access this side of the house to get to the gardening tools and the garden hose. So all this fence was put up and blocked in enough so she can't peer in and call her names. Apparently hasn't stopped that much, but it's an effort forward. There's pictures of the cameras peeling right into the bathroom, which I have documented here. And I also have that they're right into the living room, straight, not even angled down towards their fence. If they're trying to protect their property, I understand that. It's not even angled down. And if they're so secure about their property and they want to maintain the fence and their property line, they don't have one camera on the east side of the house protecting the other side. Why is that? Harassment? Bullying? There was one time when I was over, they didn't know I was over. I was inside the house with my dad. Dining room window was open. My mom went to the side of the house to get the garden hose, and I heard some comments. Some racial comments were made as well. I was going to address them, but I was told not to by my dad and my mom. They don't want to engage with them, so I let it go. But I do know what she was saying is true. They were throwing, I'm not saying they, debris was found on the front yard. Eggshells, food waste, coffee grinds, and that was constantly happening until I installed a little camera inside. They noticed it, made a comment to my mother, but miraculously, all the garbage stopped appearing. Again, don't know why. Like I said, we're not asking for 100 feet of fence. We're asking for about 8 feet of fence. Actually, the fence, I got the pictures here that show it probably increased the value of both homes. Doesn't interrupt with anybody, just her looking directly at my parents' house. It's on the side of the house. You could walk by this house so many times you won't even notice the fence. It just bothers her because she likes to, yes, I'll use the word bully my parents. I don't live there, so they take privileges with my dad can't do anything because he's too old. My mom just wants to maintain her house. The fence is, yes, higher than it should be, but she can't look over now. She can't do anything to my mother, and my mother needs some security and privacy to do what she enjoys best. They're in the golden years of their lives. There's no reason why they need to deal with this. Like, the fence goes back, and it's correct. We had a survey done, and that fence is on our property line. That will be taken care of later legally. But as of now, she just wants this to herself so she can walk and get her stuff that she needs without being harassed. There is pictures here you can see, and you can judge for yourself. That's pretty much everything I gotta say. If the fence is 8 feet long, it doesn't go to the length, it doesn't go length of the property line.
Let him finish his 5 minutes.
That's it.
Are you done, sir?
Yeah, I'm done.
We do have some questions.
Sure.
Counselor Thompson?
I just wondered if you could give the clerk your photos so they can maybe have a look at them. and
Well, I
perhaps you
also have them numbered with it, if that makes a difference.
No, I'd like to ask you some
Okay.
questions. Perhaps you can
Yeah,
walk me
sure.
through it. Thanks. I particularly wish to know, sir,
Yes.
your comments you made, you said that the neighbor property has cameras.
They do have
that is-
cameras.
Pardon?
They do have cameras right
That
there.
are peering into your parents' home?
Yep.
And does this fence then block that?
Blocks 2 of the 6 cameras they have on that side. That camera number 2 peels right into the living room.
Okay.
That camera on the top right-hand corner, that's on top of their house, that peels right into the downstairs bathroom. This shot was taken from the bathroom out.
And does the fencing now with respect to this?
Not to this
Sir,
one,
let me
no.
just finish the question.
Sorry.
Does the fencing protect or prevent this sort of visual into your parents' home? On camera 1, camera 2, for example?
No, again, because that's peeling into the living room.
So,
They've got 2 cameras above their door, which blocks where the fence does block those 2 that they peel into the dining room.
which numbers are those, sir?
They're not on the screen yet.
They're not on the screen.
No.
Is there something that could show us?
Right there.
So number 5?
Yep.
And number 6?
Number 6 is the same camera from the first one. That's point blank. And again, their cameras on their houses both are angled towards my parents' property. Shot number 5 is where they have the 2 cameras. That was where the most concern is. And if you see that fence, it's actually done in good quality and good construction. It's not industrial looking at all. And it's just to separate, to give a buffer between my mother and them. Those cameras on picture 7, directly facing towards the parents' driveway and towards the living room.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Number 20. This has become a fight between neighbors on many different little things. The height of the fence, I believe it's residential zoning, not industrial. Councillor Thompson, if you remember Crawford Road, where we put up that heavy metal fence, that was an industrial area. I believe it's only 6 feet high. So the issue is not really about people's mental or physical health. The issue is really about the height of a fence. It does look ugly. It blocks the light. You have to walk down, when you walk, the fence is beside the side door, which is the back door of the house at number 20. So when you enter the yard, that tall fence is on your right-hand side when you go into the back door of the house on the left. So it is very obvious, and it's very much making a message. So I don't believe there's any bylaw against cameras, but this, they used to be friends. And I remember when the lady at number 22 had a chicken for a pet, and she came to Eve's dog's funeral, and they had a relationship for the 23, 22 years, I guess, that the neighbors lived beside each other, and something's happened now. And now for the past 2 years, it's been all this mess that you're hearing here now. So I just believe that the height of the fence is not according to the bylaw. It's a good 8 feet high, and it is overwhelming should you walk down their walkway. That's it for me, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I have one more thing I forgot. There's no windows on that side. It's not blocking any windows. That side of the house, the right-hand side of number 22, doesn't have windows. Okay.
Councillor Lai?
Did you say,
Ma'am, please.
I think if staff can put up that picture of the neighbor that just put up about the fence. Yeah. No, not cameras. The 20. But I asked about the cameras. Yeah.
I'll put your time on hold, Councillor.
The neighbors, the neighbors photo.
Oh, I see the first
Yes,
lady.
yes. Not this one, the other one.
Ma'am, please. We got the pictures up, Councillor?
Yes,
You ready?
yes, that's the
Please.
picture. Sorry, ma'am, what number of Littleleaf do you live on?
My friend lives at number 20.
So,
Both the red fence and the
so your friend. So where do you live?
I live on 365 North Road.
So not immediate neighborhood? Okay, thank you for clarification. You said that was 8 feet? Yes. I think it was 2.33 meters. It's not quite 8 feet.
I was to understand the red one was 6 feet, and then the other one is 2 feet higher.
No, it's just about 1 feet higher. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the deputant? I got a couple of questions for you, ma'am. You stated that there's no bylaws about having people pointing cameras?
No, I don't believe there is. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's fine. Would you feel comfortable if somebody had cameras pointing at your house?
I had a heck of a time with the neighbor myself, and he had cameras on surveilling me all the time.
And do you-
I eventually moved.
Okay, so do you think that's okay, having cameras?
I think it's okay to have cameras for
But pointing in people's
breaking and entering. Yes, we need them nowadays, unfortunately.
We clearly seen pictures that are pointing into a neighbor's house. Do you think that's okay?
I think that the police have been there and they've checked that the cameras aren't pointing that way.
And you moved from your house because of the cameras. Thank you, ma'am.
No, I moved from the constant harassment of my neighbor.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate it. Okay, questions of staff? Councillor
Mr.
Lai.
Chair, I do have question of staff. So the regular bylaw is 2.0 meter, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the Chapter 447, which is the fence bylaw, the maximum height is 2 meters for a fence of this nature.
And then this one is 2.33 meter.
That is correct. That is our measurement.
And do you think that this is an acceptable variance?
We don't have any concerns with it per se. It does exceed the maximum height restriction, but we have no health and safety concerns in regards to the fence as it sits right now,
So you said
or
that was-
construction concerns, just
no
that it does
safety
exceed
concern.
the
Are
maximum
there any
height.
sideline impairment or anything that you found to be for this height?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Any
last?
sideline impairment or anything with this height?
No. No, we
And
do not.
also, have we granted any such variances before? Are there any precedents that we grant some variance on the maximum height of the fence before?
Yes, in fact, there's been many fence exemptions that have been approved by Community Council, which are similar in nature to this one.
Thank you, thank you.
Other questions of staff? Speakers? Councillor Lai?
We've visited the site, and our staff has spoken to the proponent, and we didn't think that this is a very huge variance. So I'm going to be moving that that we grant the application for the proposed exemption by the owners of 22 Littleleaf Drive. Staff recommendation number 2.
Any further speakers? All right. All those in favor?
Record a vote, please.
Good day. All right. Let's see, 4.5, right?
We have the two pledge items we have to hold.
Says 4.3.
4.3 and 4.4.
All right. So we'll go with 4.3 next. All right. Counselor Thompson, you held SC 4.3. Sorry, no, sorry, Counselor Crawford. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that was me, Council. I'd like to move staff recommendations for SC 4.3, 743 Warden Avenue.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed, carried.
And I guess the next one is mine too, SC 4.4, 1548 Kingston Road, Common Elements Condominium application. I'll move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. All right. SC 4.5, 6461 Steeles Avenue East, the zoning amendment application, final report, and we do have speakers. First speaker is Jim Robb, Friends of the Rouge Watershed. Mr. Robb, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Could I make a suggestion? Since we have 8 speakers, could we perhaps limit? No? Oh, okay.
We have 8 speakers. I'm sure that they will exercise caution and give us new facts versus, everybody saying the same thing, and that'd be greatly appreciated. Uh, 6, 7 will be okay. I'm sure that staff can put it up on the screen, Mr. Robb.
What's my time, Mr. Chairman?
5 minutes, sir. And I haven't started the clock until you are up on the mic. Are you ready to go?
As I get my glasses on, and
Just nod yes, and I'll start the clock.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of council. I've just circulated a document that goes through our detailed presentation and information. It's based on our review of the TWC file and relevant Ontario Greenbelt Provincial Policy Statement, Rouge Park and City of Toronto land use designations, my 34 years of experience applying legislation and public policy in the Rouge Park and watershed, and as a vice chair of the Ontario Environmental Assessment Board, a consolidated hearings board member, and an Scarborough plan officer. We've also consulted with professional planners and lawyers. So this is a commendable project, but we think it's grown far too big and it doesn't conform with this site, and that you should not rezone this site. This proposal has gone from 20,000 square feet in 2012 to 60,000 square feet approximately today. It's $30 million proposal, of which the TRCA is seeking to raise approximately $15 million from GTA municipalities, and much of the remaining $15 million would be raised through other levels of government. Animal rescue's commendable. However, the majority of the animals rescued by TDOC are squirrels, raccoons, skunks, geese, ducks, gulls, and pigeons, and other animals which are overpopulated. Yes, there are some really important rare species that are rescued, but most of them are common. Geese, ducks, and gulls contribute to pollution of our water by defecating in our beaches and parks, and squirrels and raccoons cause considerable damage to homes. These overly abundant species also prey on less common wildlife. I'll just jump over to some of the problems with the proposal. The proposal involves a new building of about 50,000 square feet in size. A football field size is 50,000 square feet. A parking lot for 50 cars, 2 buses, a large septic field, and thousands of meters of wooden fences to surround the site and enclose outdoor animal cages. If approved, this development will disturb, displace, and fence approximately 15 football fields of public lands in Rouge Park. It's contrary to the Priority for Ecological Integrity in the Rouge National Park Act, Section 6.1, Greenbelt Plan, Section 3.2.7, for provisions for prioritizing ecological integrity, Greenbelt Plan, Section 3.2.3, its natural heritage system policies. The TRCA's watershed plan and targeted natural system identifies this entire site for restoration to natural cover to fulfill the due diligence requirements of the watershed plan to protect water quality, biodiversity, and public interest. The provincial policy statement, section 2.2.1, says that we must protect, improve, and restore water quality and avoid cumulative impacts. The development of this site will actually cause cumulative impacts. It's proposing to remove up to 2,200 liters per minute of water for fire suppression, and it's proposing to relocate a stream to allow the pens to be built. It's just inconsistent with federal, provincial, and municipal official plans. Here's a few extra points. It would contravene the provincial and federal agreement to meet or exceed Greenbelt policies during the development of Rouge National Park. It would require 75,000 square meters of land to be disturbed or displaced that are targeted for natural heritage restoration within the TRCA Rouge Watershed Plan. It would increase the use of groundwater and the protection of septic field wastewater. It would increase runoff from paved areas, outdoor wildlife cages, and associated small ATV paths, and this would tend to adversely impact water quality and quantity. The disturbed areas, including buildings and wildlife cages, bracket structures, would exceed the 25% maximum established by the Greenbelt Plan. The TRCA proposes to relocate an intermittent stream to provide space for the animal cages. A barn containing nesting habitat for barn swallows and species at risk would be dismantled and rebuilt, displacing barn swallow nests. A pond containing habitat for painted turtles and snapping turtles would be drained, disturbing turtle and amphibian habitat. The development of the septic field is within 100 meters of a known Aboriginal burial site, and the development could disturb undetected remains and burials. The Mississauga New Credit wrote in April 2018 that, okay, essentially, you've been left in the dark and done a disservice, and so was the TRCA, because the proper facts on this weren't brought to your attention. You should defer this at the very least. I don't think the zoning bylaws should be approved at a time when you have real budgetary constraints and we can't afford to fix our transit and our roads and provide affordable housing and space for. We need to really prioritize. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Robb. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Good morning, Councillor Thompson.
So, where should this wildlife center go?
Well, we would like to work with everybody and try and find some locations. One location might be the Leslie Spit. That's very central. There's quite a bit of land there, including fill land that's relatively low quality in some ways. We suggested another part just north of the Aquatic Center on Morningside, where the Toronto Works has a very large piece of property there. It would be just south of the Meadowway, and if you built a berm from connecting the Meadowway underneath 401 and then built a U-shaped building, you could produce an area for the cages and the outdoor pens. And I think that, I'm sure with all the TRCA's properties, that they could pick one that wasn't in the Greenbelt Plan natural heritage system, wasn't in Toronto's natural area. Toronto's natural area says that development is generally not permitted in these areas. And you could see that because you're having to pass a zoning bylaw application. And I know this file really well. I've really looked at it.
So,
and it shouldn't be in this area. We may be forced to appeal it if it's passed.
fair enough. So, one, you have identified other potential locations. to the issue for you is the impact on the natural, life in the Rouge Park itself.
It's
And-
for common wildlife, it's displacing endangered species habitat, and it's not in
In
conformity.
addition.
And it's not in conformity with existing Greenbelt Plan, Rouge Park plans, Toronto official plans.
Inconsistent with our own plans.
Yes.
Okay. And this building, as you described it, the size of a football field, would this building then be the largest building that would be constructed in the Rouge Park?
Well, that's part of the problem. The first things that the federal government seems to be doing with Rouge National Urban Park is to spend millions of dollars on big new buildings. So there's a proposal for a new visitor center on Meadowvale, and I think a modest-sized visitor center is a good idea. There's proposal for a Toronto Zoo endangered species recovery right in the middle of a nature.
So that was the reason why I asked you the question, sir, because I wanted to understand then, what are you and others doing in order to address this with the federal government in terms of the capacity and size of buildings that would be considered for the Rouge Park?
Well, we are meeting with local MPs and MPPs to tell them what's going on. And in fact, what's going on here is there's a clear conflict of interest. In 2012, when the Rouge Park was announced by Minister Kent, the Minister of Environment, just a few months later, his wife appeared before the TRCA and said, my husband, the Minister of Environment, and I are going to do everything possible to get this Toronto Wildlife Facility in Rouge Park. And then the TRCA became a co-proponent. So you have a conflict there.
Fair enough. So there is nothing inconsistent with respect to what you're asking today with respect to your concern with the federal government's position on building large-scale buildings in the Rouge Park. So
No.
it's very consistent.
It's very consistent, and this really, 50% of Rouge Park is already in private leases, not accessible to the public or nature. This would be another case. In Parks Canada, a recent report came out and said that 40% of their properties, the real estate, is already in poor condition. We all know that the leased houses and properties in Rouge Park were not well maintained by the Ontario government. The TRC has done a better job, but I would estimate that the cost of the couple hundred existing real estate properties in Rouge Park to fix them up to safety and building code standards will probably be $50 million to that. You don't need to add on a $30 million building which displaces nationally rare habitat in the park and adds to your budget deficit.
So you would like to see further discussions, potentially to look at alternative site for the Wildlife Center if this particular matter were to be referred back, because if we were to make a decision today, it means we're acquiescing and agreeing.
Yes, and in fact, the TRCA hydrogeologist and your own engineer said that this zoning bylaw should not be passed until there's more information on the adequacy of the water supply for fire suppression, until there's a better understanding of whether the removal of that much water will impact, is accessible, if it's actually there, and if it will impact groundwater and surface water resources. So you have two staff reports that say the zoning bylaw should not be passed, or opinions, I'm saying, until, so we would like it deferred.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Any other questions of the deputant? All right, thank you, Mr. Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of council.
We have Rebecca Middleton. No. Is there a Claudia Benedict in the room? Okay, ma'am, you were scheduled to speak. Are you still?
I was. That was an error. My colleague James Razor will be speaking.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Rebecca, are you ready to go? All right, ma'am, you got 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to talk fast because I got a lot. Hello, everyone, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Middleton. I am definitely in favor of the amendment to the site-specific regulations and land uses to permit an animal shelter, veterinary hospital, and wildlife center, including ancillary supportive uses for essential workers for the lands at 6461 Steeles Avenue East. Thank you.
Thank you to staff.
I would like you to know that I was raised on this farm at 6461 Steeles Avenue. We knew it as Lot 11, Concession 5 in Scarborough. I also attended Hillside Public School, which is now an outdoor education facility and home of the Friends of the Rouge watershed. I was helping the Rouge River before it was cool to do so. We had no gym in our 3-room schoolhouse, so we went down to the Rouge to clean it up for our physical education. We explored it for our history lessons and studied the river and its banks for our geography class. I've seen the changes in this area in agriculture, residential, and parkland. There is a convergence of all 3 of these types of lands uses surrounding this property. It reminds me of how important it is that we accept this application because of all the human contact that occurs in the GTA with wildlife that surrounds us. I'm very surprised to see the website for the Friends of the Rouge watershed, and that's what this is. A photo of a person holding 2 baby cottontail rabbits. I was shocked. This sends a terrible message to the others who might think that it's okay to take such a risk with these babies' lives. Why would anybody pick up a baby rabbit? Do they not realize that the mother may not accept them after being handled? Do they not realize that the baby rabbits are often left in a nest while the mother leaves them to eat? Were they picked up because someone's dog found them while they were out on a walk? Were they taken to a wildlife center so that they could be checked out to make sure they were fine and be taken care of if necessary or returned from whence they came? A wildlife center would provide these baby cottontails with outdoor housing in a natural, quiet location, the Rouge National Urban Park, if it was needed. Wildlife is never released by the Toronto Wildlife Center in a strange area for the animal. If it was found in Etobicoke, it gets returned to Etobicoke in the general area where it was found. Animals will never be released in the Rouge Park unless they were found in the Rouge Park. There will be educational areas at the Wildlife Center to educate people on how to live near and with wildlife, explaining to people simple things like why it's not a good idea to feed the squirrels peanuts in your back deck, or what to do with your windows so the birds don't fly into them, with the focus being on teaching people how to coexist with wildlife. There will also be webcams everywhere on the site that will link to online learning. This would be like a virtual classroom. It would give people the opportunity to see baby mink or a loon recovering under the expert care of the wildlife staff. This center would be the hub of learning for people who wanted to help wildlife by volunteering. This would expand to a career for others. The center would have an expansive internship program for vets and vet tech students and other students in related fields. Other people will come as well. A wildlife center here will provide the opportunity for others to come who are considering starting a center or program in their community to help wildlife and to help educate people about wildlife issues. This will be an exciting way to ensure that even more help is provided in the future. There will be planting of trees, which in turn will grow and actually hide the presence of the areas that will hold the wildlife to acclimatize them before they are released into the area they came from. This center will not be a blight or an eyesore. I understand that there will be an area of water for animals in the park to be able to get a drink, and meadows where natural plants will be given the chance to reestablish themselves once again. It makes my heart sing to think that the land that has been farmed for as long as I can remember and before will be regenerated into the park. It will be ecologically restored to provide habitats for snakes, birds, mammals, reptiles, and more. The environment will be renewed from the human intervention that is necessary to provide water and income in order to live. It will be given back to Mother Earth. The farm has been there for over 100 years, cohabitating with wildlife. In my day, we had wild ducks on the pond, along with frogs, herons, pheasants.
Time's up.
You want me to, okay.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Okay.
Any questions of the deputant?
One quick.
Councillor Thompson.
So just so that I'm really clear, ma'am, so you are in support of
Yes,
proceeding? That's what I wanted to
absolutely.
make sure I was really clear.
Yes, that was my first
you have
statement.
knowledge about the center based on interaction with those who are planning to build a center?
Absolutely.
Okay, and you grew up on the...
On that farm.
Yes, okay, all right. And you believe that the center will enhance the attributes of the Rouge Park itself by bringing more people there to not only see the center, but to see the park itself and
Yes,
create
and to
this-
educate them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm definitely for it.
Thank you. But just one final thing. So, but if this matter were to be referred for further discussion amongst the parties, would you have any objections to that? I don't know what the outcome would be, but if we were not to deal with it today, would you have any objections to that?
No, I would like to participate in,
Okay.
in those objections. Like, if there were any objections, I would like to speak
Well, let me just make sure.
again.
Let me just make sure I'm clarifying what I'm saying. What I'm simply saying is that if we were to refer this matter back
Yes.
for further discussion amongst all the parties, you would be interested in participating in that?
Absolutely.
Okay, and we could be open for everybody?
Yes, and I
Okay.
would like to see that the Friends of the Rouge watershed, because of all of their objectives and
And history?
history, would work in conjunction with the Wildlife Center, like volunteer, see what it's about, and
Okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions of the deputant? Seeing none, we're going to the next person, and that would be Ann Romer. Ann? You got 5 minutes, ma'am.
Good morning. Nice to see you all, and thank you for giving me what I need, which is 2 minutes. I have a tiny bit of laryngitis, so please forgive me. I was the proud host of Animal House Calls on CP24 and Animal Planet for more than a decade, and through that period of time, we learned what Toronto Wildlife Center does in terms of saving, protecting, enriching, and enhancing the lives of our beloved, precious wildlife here in the GTA. It is an unique organization that works tirelessly to support wild animals in need, but also to educate humans who require help understanding how to live alongside one of nature's greatest gifts, wildlife. Toronto Wildlife Center's reach has, out of necessity, expanded in recent years to the entire GTA as we see our borders melt away with major housing and highway development and a more unified attitude across the Greater Toronto Area. Wild animals made this region their home long before humans began putting down roots. These often vulnerable creatures rely on the knowledge, compassion, professionalism, and the expertise of the entire TWC team. The shelter and the medical equipment housed within also crucial when it comes to saving lives, rescue and release, and education. I personally can't speak highly enough of Natalie, Carr, Bonin, and the entire Toronto Wildlife Center team, both staff and volunteers. Wildlife warriors, animal angels, creature caregivers, call them what you wish. Their work is essential to the thousands of wildlife who inhabit our beautiful green spaces and sometimes our own backyards here in the GTA. Again, apologize for a bit of laryngitis, but thank you for giving me some time. I believe in TWC, and I'm not an expert when it comes to politics, to zoning, to bylaws, but this is a very positive move on their part and would be on yours as well. Hi, Michael. Nice to see you. And Jim, nice to see you. Oh, thanks. Yes.
Hi, thank you for coming in today. You spoke a little bit about education and sharing with the public. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that, what you've seen with the Toronto Wildlife Center do in those sorts of regards.
Well, they open their doors to community groups, to school groups, to come and see how they work and why they do what they do. And a better, bigger facility that was more in alignment with nature would enhance their ability to educate and to elaborate on the great work that they do.
And do you see that this is kind of like a unique center? Like, there's not anything else like that right now that's taking care of this sort of wildlife, right? Like, it's not like the same that your average vet could do, like, it's quite unique.
No, in fact, I believe, and Natalie Bonin will confirm this, but I believe that it is against the law for some veterinarians to treat wildlife.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, nice to be here, thanks.
Well, this is quite a interesting morning for me. I used to work here for the mayor and got to know this whole Rouge issue because of the thousands of people that came here for OPA 721, which is what started the ability for this huge parcel of land, our beloved Rouge Park, to occur. So I am asking for a deferral of this issue. Jim Robb has pointed the lack of certain expert advice with regard to the water, and I feel that this is against provincial policies. And the concern that I have, and what I'm hearing now, is the public are forgetting what two groups, and in specific Lois James, have done to get this park to where it is now. And it always has been based on ecological integrity, and that's what the province, under various parties, have supported and endorsed. And I feel, again, by deferring this decision today and having the opportunity for the broader scope of the general public to continue to add its information to council before you make your decision would be very useful. One lady talked about Hillside. She talked about, and so did Ms. Rome, about having the opportunity for a large facility to educate the public. Well, forgive me, councillors, Save the Rouge and Friends of the Rouge Watershed have been working out of a tiny room in Hillside, and look what we've achieved in 30 years. So size does not matter in order to get this thing done right. The suggestion by, or Jim's answer about where other locations might be is something that I think needs to be addressed by council. It's a lot of money to be putting into a huge facility, and this park is very, very special, and the ecological integrity has always been the driving force towards making this park. I was the representative of Save the Rouge on the first park management plan committee struck by the province, and we spent 6 months working out the mission statement, and guess what it was? Ecological integrity with all the stakeholders around the table. This facility is too big. It's going to have impact on the watershed, and relying on groundwater and septic and fencing off a huge area, I think, is contrary to what people have expected for this park. And also, it has a contradiction in terms of the monies that it's asking for funding. Where is their money going to come from? From the taxpayers? We own all this land. The citizens of Canada own this land currently, and it needs to be dealt with in a more meaningful way. I'd like to clarify the handful of bunnies that were in the picture there. They were rescued because there had been a fire in one of the areas in the park, and they were actually taken to the Toronto Wildlife Centre. So once again, Friends of the Rouge Watershed have always tried to do the right thing, the meaningful thing for our beloved wildlife. I was a founding member of STORM, and so subsequently my biggest concern has always been to do with water. And so I am worried that you do not have sufficient information about the hydrology, the use of the groundwater, where that septic water, how it's going to unfold, where is it going to go? And you have a responsibility before you make that decision to be looking at that decision, please. So I do ask respectfully to defer this until you get the further information. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie Carr, a longtime environmentalist. I grew up in Scarborough in what is now Ward 25, and I still live in Scarborough today in Councillor Crawford's ward. Growing up, our backyard was on the edge of the Rouge Valley, so as a child, I was fortunate to have it as my playground, key to making me a lifelong advocate for nature and for wildlife. I am also a biologist, the executive director and founder of Toronto Wildlife Centre. I don't know if there's a way to get the presentation maybe up on the screen, but thank you for allowing me to speak today, and thank you for your support. Thanks also to city staff and many departments who have persevered and worked hard to get us to this point today. It has been a long road, and thank you to our volunteer architect. We've been working on this project since 2012 and first submitted our zoning bylaw amendment to the city in 2014. So there's been a huge amount of investigation and discussions and research over the last 5 years that have got us to this point. So just to quickly go through some points about Toronto Wildlife Centre. We first opened in 1993, and we've been open every single day since then, helping the community in the city of Toronto. We're the only organization in Toronto of our kind, and the services we provide are not able to be provided by anyone else in the city of Toronto. We have about 40 staff members now and over 500 volunteers working at the centre. We operate almost entirely on donations, and we operate now mainly out of Downsview Park in a falling apart old building, which is slated for demolition, with 2 other facilities for animals and outdoor enclosures. So Toronto as a city has gone to great lengths to preserve and enhance wildlife habitat. It's one of the things that I certainly love about living in the city of Toronto, but that means that there's hundreds of species of wild animals that live here with us. People don't know when they're going to encounter a wild animal in distress. People don't have to be wildlife lovers or thinking about animals that day to encounter an animal in need of help. And when they do, they're immediately panicking and on the phone or on the internet trying to find an organization to help, and they end up at Toronto Wildlife Centre. We've admitted over 270 different species since we opened. Only a handful of those species are actually conflict species, sort of the bad guys that people talk about, like raccoons and pigeons and squirrels, although a lot of people do love those animals too. The vast majority of animals we work with are certainly not in that category of animals. Our hotline has been considered the gold standard for hotlines in North America. We teach around the continent, and we handle about 30,000 phone calls a year from residents about wildlife issues. Our rescue program is also unique. It's the only one of its kind in the entire country. Our staff and volunteers are very, very highly trained, carrying out tasks that no one else in the city of Toronto is able to do. In this case, on the Gardiner Expressway, Toronto Animal Services actually was not able to help this raccoon and called us and waited on site until we got there. We also have the only full veterinary hospital in the country that actually treats native wild animals. We work closely with a lot of organizations, networking with the Toronto Zoo vets, for example, on particular cases. We are very busy with medical cases arriving every day at the centre, and we can perform the full range of procedures that you would expect for your dog or cat at a veterinary clinic. Our wildlife rehabilitation program is very busy with all those hundreds of species of animals. We never know who's going to arrive at the centre on any given day because of the diversity of wildlife that live here in the city with us. Or we don't know what kind of help they're going to need either. They come in all different conditions with all different needs for help. And then each animal that we care for requires different care depending on the species, age, and condition of the animal that comes in. Pre-release conditioning for the animals is critical to the recovery of the animals. When they are outdoors, it's when they're in the last step of rehabilitation. And the outdoor enclosures are designed in such a way that they are kind of like being back in the wild for those animals. They're as close to being in nature as we can possibly provide for those animals. And actually, in many cases, the enclosures just sit empty because we don't have that particular species in at the time, and sometimes they're even used by local wild animals that can get in and out. Release of animals, of course, is always the key, and they're released back in the areas where they originally came from. Even babies, when they're raised, are released back in the area where they were found. And we educate the community in a wide variety of ways. For us, the home in the Rouge Park would be absolutely perfect for us. The reason for that is because it's actually in the city of Toronto. We'd have great partnerships with TRCA and others, and they're going to talk about their great restoration work today. The land for the outdoor rehabilitation needs is really key. The space and quiet is important for a lot of the species that we work with. They absolutely need those outdoor areas. And I'll just speed up here because I'm reaching the end. But the vision for the future, of course, is to provide a lot more programs and services. I'm on my last slide. Than we are now. We've got some early partners and supporters coming on board, and hopefully if we get our zoning bylaw approved, we'll get back into our capital campaign, raising the funds we need for this great project for the city. Thank you very much.
Any questions of the deputy? Councillor McGilvery.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering, could you speak to the uniqueness of what your vets and your staff do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're the only licensed wildlife rehabilitator at all in the city of Toronto, and we're the only one of our kind in the province. So the veterinarians are specialized in wildlife medicine. Our staff are generally either veterinary technicians, biologists, or those who have a background in environmental science. And we do provide a lot of on-the-job training. They get training at international conferences as well to work with wildlife. So we're all basically conservation-minded people who are wildlife lovers, but also very science background.
And you have, you take interns? Like, is it useful to you, like, there was questions about location. So maybe can you first speak to what is the whole area that you service?
Well, we try to stay, most of our work is in the city of Toronto. We try to stay within the Greater Toronto area. Once in a while, we still have to leave the Greater Toronto area because the wildlife rehabilitators around the province don't have the full range of capabilities that we do. For example, we were getting a number of calls about a sandhill crane with a broken leg in Alliston a few years back, and we tried really hard to walk the local groups through how to catch this fully flighted sandhill crane, and they couldn't do it. So finally, our rescue team just had to go and catch him. Similarly, last summer, we were twice up in the Muskokas catching injured loons with fishing hooks down their throats because they were still swimming in the middle of Lake Rosso, and that's a really hard capture.
And can you speak to like what are the intern opportunities you have? Like how are you really a center of expertise for growing the next generation of knowledge?
We have, so our volunteers right now, a large proponent of those are weekly volunteers or community volunteers from all walks of life, including vets and vet techs and biologists. But we do also have full-time interns as well that work with us for 4 months or 6 months or even in some cases a year. And those to us are really, really exciting placements because it's so difficult about learning about the type of work that we do. There's very few courses offered in schools right now, and even those courses that are offered don't have a hands-on component. They apply to me for jobs sometimes, and my first question is, have you ever touched a wild animal? And they say no, and I say, okay, well, sorry. And I go back to our volunteer pool and look there. But the full-time interns, to me, are really key because it means that one day when maybe I retire, there might be other wildlife centers starting up out there. There might be people who come and learn and train with us who could take their knowledge to their own communities and start up other wildlife centers where they live. And in fact, I have often said that Toronto itself could use 10 wildlife centers. We are such a green city with so much wildlife that to me the internships are very exciting for that because it enables future generations.
And can you speak to like the urgency for why we need to act on this now? Like what is going on with your lease and how are you operating in the interim?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, we first submitted our zoning bylaw application to the City of Toronto in 2014, April of 2014, so almost 5 years now. And so there's been a lot of details that had to be looked at and scrutinized. There's been a gazillion meetings and phone calls and emails and discussions, and we've really, I feel, turned over every single stone and looked at every single angle of this project. In the meantime, our park, our location in Downsview Park has been slated for demolition. The building is literally falling apart. If anyone's been there, I mean, it's bad. I mean, the shingles fly off the roof, it rains, the water pours under the walls, it's really falling apart. And now we've been told by Downsview Park that they will not renew our license again, and they are not maintaining our building. So we have to leave that building this year. So we're really out of time. So for us, this is really, it's really an emergency for us, but it's an emergency for you too. Since we are the only organization in Toronto providing our services, any interruption of those services or even downsizing of those services is going to directly impact the residents of Toronto.
And is ecological integrity and environmental protection is important to you as well? And are you trying to bring that into the design and into the work that's being done?
Absolutely. I mean, I am just the biggest tree hugger out there, and I have been my whole life. I mean, certainly, you know, well, TRCA will talk about the fantastic restoration work that they're doing on the site. So the site, which has been farmed for decades, will be largely renaturalized, a vast proportion of the site. Even the outdoor compound, so those are the fenced areas in which there are smaller enclosures for wild animals, are going to be largely naturalized inside the fences as well, in and around the enclosures. That's better for the recovering wild animals. Little baby rabbits, like the ones that the friends, that Jim Rob's group found, really, really need quiet outdoor areas that feel to them like they're in nature if they're even going to live, you know, and survive the captivity process to be reared. So there's a lot of work being done on the site itself. There's a lot of green features, which I believe our architect James will speak to later, but there's certainly a green roof on the building, there's permeable pavers. The building is basically just as large as it needs to be in order to accomplish what it does, and we're trying to think about all those aspects as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you. No doubt, great work that's being done by your organization and so on. I'm just wondering, and I know that some of the questions that Councillor McKelvey had asked, I was going to ask, so I won't need to repeat those, but I'm just wondering, so when the decision was made some 5 years or beyond that period ago, what areas did you look at? Did you look at a variety of locations and so on? And how did you arrive at the decision with respect to the Rouge Park?
We looked at a lot of locations, and certainly we had looked at locations that are city-owned buildings. We looked at locations on the Toronto Zoo property itself. TRCA showed us a number of properties. We looked at old schools. We even looked at locations outside of Toronto, which I wasn't very comfortable with, but we wanted to look at everything. So we looked at locations in Vaughan and in Markham and in King Township. And the thing is that, you know, while a part of me, you know, certainly would love to just put us in some industrial area where we're in a, you know, a very built-up area and we don't have to impact the surrounding environment in any way at all, that's just not feasible for the kind of work we do, in particular for the outdoor rehabilitation portion of working with the animals. When you have, you know, 5,000, 6,000 animals currently, and that's not meeting the demand, so in the future that's going to expand, going through our hospital and rehabilitation facilities, and they all have that last stage of the outdoor rehabilitation component, a lot of outdoor land is required. And right now, for example, there are some species like white-tailed deer that we cannot work with. We get call after call after call throughout the year about deer fawns that are orphaned, adult deer that are injured. We can't take them because we have nowhere to put them. And if you can imagine, you're a 300-pound adult deer, you need a lot of outdoor space, you know, to recover and feel like you're in an outdoor environment. Even peregrine falcons that we get right now quite routinely, our 50-foot flight cage that we have is way too small. That's not adequate flying space for a bird of that caliber. We occasionally even get eagles. Forget about flying eagles in a 50-foot flight cage. So the outdoor component at the Rouge Park, the 67-acre property, was the piece that was especially exciting for us. Having that land, and also having land that was very quiet and that's going to be conserved long-term. We had hoped a long time ago that Downsview Park, you know, might end up being in that situation, but now it's kind of a rock concert venue in the summers and it's very loud.
Right, so your design and the purpose of your organization is actually to help animals, not to be, you know, impacting them negatively. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, our purpose is to help wild animals and also their habitat. I think I often hear from colleagues at other environmental NGOs that we're in an enviable position because we do have the pictures and the videos and the stories of the animals that we can then use to actually tell the message of their habitat and the other challenges that they have.
What I wanted to get to, though, is Mr. Rob's concerns about the natural habitat of the animals and so on that are there that would be impacted potentially by the development. I wonder if you could speak to that. And then the other component part of it, please. He mentioned about the water, the concern with respect to the water. And how have you and your team sort of addressed that? Because I'm presuming that you would have addressed that. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And so to the first point, we're doing everything we can to think about the habitat in the area and the wildlife that are in the area now or who might come to the area in the future. For example, some of our outdoor compounds that are fenced, we made it a point of separating them in the middle so that there was a corridor for larger animals in the area like deer or coyotes to move along and not have to be forced up and near steels. We also are certainly very aware of the barn swallows in the main barn. We actually had volunteers doing baseline monitoring of that colony for 3 years, and we worked with Bird Studies Canada and ornithologists at the Royal Ontario Museum to determine the size of the colony and the activity in the nest and how we can enhance it over time. So that's part of the plans to enhance that as well. So we're doing everything we can to help preserve and protect not only the animals we work with, but the ones that are actually there on the site too. With respect to the water, that's certainly not my area of expertise, and I might let either TRCA or architects speak to that a little bit more, but certainly moving the water course, my understanding is right now the water course is kind of held down by the farmer's tiles that have historically been in that field, and the water course will be allowed to come back up to the surface. It does have to be moved a little bit to conform with our site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
I'll be here. I have a presentation as well. Thanks. No, we're not ready.
This is yours.
There we go. Ready? Good afternoon. My name is James Razor. I'm principal architect in Stamford Downey Architects, and I'm the applicant for the zoning bylaw amendment. Stamford Downey Architects met Natalie, the executive director of the Toronto Wildlife Centre, in 2012 at the open house at their existing facility in Downsview Park. Since 2012, our consultant team, along with the Toronto Wildlife Centre, has attended multiple design meetings and site visits with the following agencies: the City of Toronto, including Planning, Fire Services, Development Engineering, the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, the Rouge Park Alliance, Parks Canada, and during this process, the Toronto Wildlife Centre has extended an invitation to visit their current, the Toronto Wildlife Centre has extended an invitation to visit their current facility to all interested parties so that they can understand the Toronto Wildlife Centre's scope of operations and their requirements. Many of the city staffs involved in the review of this application, as well as the city councillors, staff with Parks Canada, and the Toronto and Region Conservation Authorities have accepted this offer to tour the wildlife facilities. Since 2013, our consultant team has engaged in extensive coordination with these groups on preparation for the studies and reports required on our site plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 2014. Specifically in relation to the stormwater management and the restoration of the north-south watercourse. The facility for the Toronto Wildlife Centre at Rouge Park will include the following: a new building to house the centre's main functioning, including the veterinary hospital, including surgery rooms, radiology, and diagnostic laboratory. The rehabilitation areas, including the cleaning and care of oiled wildlife, outdoor closures for the wildlife rehabilitation, and acclimation prior to the release back to where they were found. These enclosures will be distributed in, let's see if I can go back up. These enclosures will be distributed in fenced-in compounds, typical construction in lightweight framing with metal mesh on the top and sides. Where the spacing of the enclosure permits, the open area between will be planted in coordination with the site restoration that's been coordinated with Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. Education and presentation areas for school visits, public open houses, presentations and education seminars, an outdoor education area to demonstrate conflict resolution solutions for wildlife, as well as native and wildlife-friendly plantings and landscaping. Wildlife rescue, including vehicles and equipment storage. The existing Mino Resort farmhouse will be retained and renovated to provide an on-site intern housing as part of the Toronto Wildlife Centre's education programs and partnerships with post-secondary institutions in Canada and abroad. The existing barn will be retained and renovated to provide facilities for the Wildlife Centre rescue staff. The new building has been sited on the land previously used for agriculture, which is the photo on your left-hand side there, and has been set back from Steeles Avenue and designed so that the existing house and barn remain prominent, and the barn remains the tallest building on the site. Stanford Downey Architects explored several locations on this site until the final position of the building was determined in collaboration with the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. That's the photo on the right-hand side. There are no significant provincial wetlands, no areas of natural scientific interest, and no significant wildlife habitat identified on the subject property. The Cedar Brae Woods, identified as a key natural heritage feature per the Greenbelt Plan, and the intermittent stream, identified as a key hydrologic feature, will not be affected by the proposal, and a 30-meter minimum vegetation protection zone has been provided around each. Additionally, 30-meter buffers have also been provided at the overland watercourses, although this is not required. The proposal will provide Toronto Wildlife Centre with the opportunity to expand their current operations to the benefit of the greater community at large, including the obvious economic benefit for the current Toronto Wildlife Centre staff and their volunteers, the future economic benefit of those trained and educated at Toronto Wildlife Centre and their respective communities, an increased public awareness about the needs and methods to achieve healthy interactions with wildlife, the shared benefit with the Rouge National Urban Park to engage and attract visitors to both facilities, the ecological restoration of the majority of the property by the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, including the conservation of heritage resources. We share the city's conclusion that the proposal is consistent with the Greenbelt, consistent with the province's policy statement, and conforms to the city official plan. Additionally, we feel that the proposal is consistent with the strategies and objectives of the Rouge National Urban Park Management Plan, and we support the city staff's recommendations to Community Council to approve the proposal. Thank you.
Any questions of the deputant? Councillor Lai.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify, did I hear something about saying that you said that there's no wildlife habitat in the area, or minimal?
No, that's not the question. The statement in that one there is that there is no significant provincial wetlands, there's no areas of natural scientific interest, and there's no significant wildlife habitat identified on the subject property because it's all farmland right now.
Okay, so those.
However, it will be restored.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I hear that correctly. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Did you want an answer on the water?
Go ahead.
So originally we started this project in 2013, and we worked for a long time with the City of Toronto. We did a lot of coordination back with them and that, and it was determined that we could not bring a water line to the site. So since then, the water that will be pertaining to the site will be an on-site tank, a dedicated tank to the fire services, so that will handle the sprinklers and everything like that. A second water tank will hold the domestic water for the site, and that will be trucked in as it's needed to fill up that tank. And if it's available, we are exploring the aspect of being able to use the wells on the site. If the well cannot supply enough water, it'll all be supplied on the site by the client itself. So we're not taking water from the site at all.
Thank you very much.
So what you're doing with the water there, that's common for rural Ontario, like you're using best management processes that we use throughout.
Yeah, we met with the fire
of the
department services several times to talk because we need to make sure that the building is sprinklered. Anything with caged animals, you all know the stories about fires in horse barns, chicken barns, and stuff like that. These animals are in captivity while they're in the interior restoration, so we need to make sure that the barn is, or that the facility is sprinklered. We talked with fire services several times. We looked at ponds, we looked at all sorts of things, but fire ponds are not a great way to do something like this. The original application that we did, we were trying to get a line across the bridge and 9th line to put in a fire hydrant out there, but that's not possible as well. So the agreement that we came up at that time would be that we would provide a firefighting service tank that would hold all the water we need for the sprinklers.
But my question is, this situation is not unique to this facility.
No,
We have many
not for-
facilities
not
throughout
for urban
Ontario
areas.
that have this challenge.
No, it's not.
In the agricultural sector.
Yeah.
And, okay, and farming. Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm on the side.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen McDonald, and I'm here to provide an overview of the ecological restoration that is occurring right now on the site. This all began, I guess, last spring when we, TRCA, invited stakeholders, including Parks Canada, the Toronto Wildlife Centre, its volunteer architects, the City of Toronto, to figure out the vision for this site in terms of the ecological restoration. So we all decided on this goal with the following objectives, and the idea is that it will complement the future Toronto Wildlife Centre on site. The idea for this is to take agricultural lands and restore them back to the natural habitat that was once there. TRCA does this frequently. My group alone, we do about $10 million in restoration in the GTA each year. The context for this all occurred beginning last winter when City Council directed TRCA to use $3.5 million to restore the site, which includes providing access, grading, fencing, and different requirements that the Wildlife Center needs, that the site needs. This was amended in 2018 to also include restoration of the historic farmhouse and barn. So to provide you with a really brief overview of what the restoration plan is for the site, we have initiated our hydrology work. So this is restoring the intermittent stream that is present. Right now, the whole area is tile drained, meaning that water quickly leaves the site. And the idea is to try to hold the water there. So equipment is on site right now. We're recontouring that drainage swale, and that will outlet eventually into a wetland that is highlighted in blue on the site. The other colors on the site represent the different ecological communities that we will be installing there over the next 2 years to restore natural cover to the site. Basically, it'll become a future forest, and you can see that we've also got the plans for the future Toronto Wildlife Centre highlighted on that toward the northwest of the site, and then the compounds are on toward the east of the site and are surrounded by the restored area. Where are we right now? Well, I mentioned we're currently undergoing this restoration, so we've got about 6 to 7 more weeks of grading in front of us. We'll follow that with planting. We've got several thousand, 40,000 plants estimated to go in there this spring. We've already got essential wildlife habitat structures installed, and we'll be moving soon on creating the barn swallow habitat that Natalie mentioned in her presentation. The barn will still remain available to barn swallows, and we're actually hoping to increase the colony size by taking on some predator proofing and other enhancements. For the farmhouse and barn renovations, we have tree removals expected. We're hoping to get those this month. We've got asbestos survey planned, and then following that, we'll be doing the abatement and then other assessments with the restoration work to follow. For the Toronto Wildlife Centre operational infrastructure, we've got portable relocation that we're hoping to undertake in April. This is coming from the 5 Shoreham site of TRCA's former head office and future head office. And then we've got outdoor compound fencing that we're hoping to complete this May. And that really wraps up a high-level overview of the site. This is what our budget looks like in terms of where the $3.5 million is going. More than half of it is going to ecological restoration, along with site securement, access improvements, and then the Toronto Wildlife Centre operational infrastructure. Thank you.
Hi. In the report here, it says there's going to be considerable habitat on the site. So this include expanding natural areas, removing oil tile drains, recreating a healthy stream, reforestation, and meadowland planting. So overall, at the end of your process, this site will be in better ecological condition than it is at the start?
Absolutely.
My second question is, this has gone through considerable review by TRCA and has appeared before the board there already. So there's no surprises to you here today about what's happening at this site?
There's not.
And TRCA has been involved in this rezoning and review of these applications that have happened?
We have, yes.
And then my last question is, so the Toronto Wildlife Centre will be ready based on the work that you're doing right now to restore the farm, the farmhouse, the barn, put a portable and some fencing. They will be able to move in this summer. We're on target for that move there?
Late summer, yes.
Okay. And so this rezoning application that's here towards us, that's so that we can move forward with starting on a more permanent solution for them in the long term?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Morning, members of the Community Council. My name is Robert Gibson. Member at Cedar Brae Golf Club for about 40 years. I'm here this morning with Darren Little, who's also the golf course superintendent. Been a superintendent at Cedar Brae for 27 years. Our question comments this morning, we are the abutting landowner to the west. I don't have any pictures, but I think you're familiar with the site. Our question or concern is a fairly narrow one, and it's about the interface we have between the proposal and Cedar Brae's property line to the west. To be brief, our main issue is with that interface and the 40-meter setback and the 100-meter setback in the proposed bylaw. We are okay with that in terms of the proposed bylaw. And there is a planting that is occurring or in the site plan that's in the plans that we've reviewed along that west property line of the proposal. I think one of our concerns is more about the parking and the loading and drop-off areas as well. Those are in the plans as well identified, and they appear to be in line with the 40-meter setback of the proposed building. One of our concerns, we are supportive of the landscaping and planting plan that will occur along the western edge to serve as a buffer between the properties. One of our questions is what are the setbacks that would be required under the current bylaws for the parking and the drop-off and loading from Cedar Brae's property line to the west, and if it would be in keeping with the site plan that we've also reviewed, whether it would be appropriate to have in the bylaw itself as well a landscape buffer, a setback for the loading and the drop-off areas, as well as the parking at the 40-meter or even like a 35-meter setback to allow for walkways and pedestrian walkways, if there would be appropriate to incorporate a landscape setback as well as parking setbacks from Cedar Brae's property line to the west. That way, the planting that is being contemplated in the plan has the space to be provided, and then Cedar Brae would, as always, love to be able to also work with the TRCA, with the applicant to address and hopefully deal with that planting plan and see if there's a way that we could provide that compatible interface in terms of planting between the Cedar Brae's golf course, the turf functioning on the golf course to the west of the property line, and the planting plan that is contemplated in the plan right now. We'd like to be able to work in collaboration on that planting plan and help facilitate it, but I think that's really our main question or concern, and if you have any questions of Darren or myself, we'd be pleased to answer them.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of Scarborough Community Council.
I think he's all right.
My address is 94 Torrance Road in Scarborough, and I'm here as a lifelong Scarborough resident and private citizen who's very supportive of this project. It was actually over 30 years ago that I stood at this podium and addressed Mayor Gus Harris and the councillors of the day advocating for the creation of a joint national provincial park in the Rouge Valley. 3 decades ago, we're now at 20,000 acres for the Rouge Park, largest urban park on planet Earth. First national urban park in Canada, and anywhere that we're aware of. So I think this park is a great asset for Scarborough residents and the whole GTA, and in fact our whole country. I'm going to urge you today to support the staff recommendations. I would not support deferring the item, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But I also want to give you a little bit of perspective, because I heard at least one submission to you that was rather dramatic in saying things like, this is displacing habitat for rare species. And some of those statements are just factually incorrect. I also want you to be aware that this site, for example, right now, I think, I agree with your staff report. I agree with that you have a letter before you from Parks Canada supporting your staff recommendations. And Parks Canada, I have to say, are the experts nationwide on what's good ecological planning. So if this application was in any way to harm the Rouge Valley or the ecological integrity of this park, I wouldn't be standing here supporting it. Wildlife Center wouldn't propose it. Your staff wouldn't support it. Conservation Authority wouldn't support it. Parks Canada wouldn't support it. But all those organizations are supporting the Wildlife Center being here. I'd like to bring to your attention that this site used to be called the Runnymede Development Site. This 67 acres was owned by the Runnymede Development Corporation. Their intent was to build an estate subdivision here with 12 5-acre lots, with 5,000 square foot homes on them, with the manicured front lawn and the manicured back lawn and the swimming pool and the cabana and the security lights around the perimeter of their properties to protect themselves, because when you live in a 5,000 square foot house, you want to make sure that you and your family are safe. So we've gone from a scenario which I fought against, where developers were proposing a subdivision here that would have harmed the ecological integrity of this site and the Rouge Park, to a very fortunate position where the City of Toronto, well, Conservation Authority purchased the site, and it's going to be transferred to the National Parks Canada, put into the National Park. We're going to have a massive restoration project on the site, and I'm going to quote from your own staff report 2 things. This is on page 5 and 6 for about habitat and enhancement work. Your staff, and I'm going to quote them, your staff state in this report, this project represents one of Toronto's largest restoration sites and includes protecting, restoring, and expanding existing natural areas, regrading the site back to a more natural landscape, removing old tile drains, recreating a healthy stream on site, along with a significant amount of riparian habitat, reforestation of parts of the site, meadowland plantings throughout the site, and provides post and paddle fencing where appropriate around the perimeter of the property. The paragraph ends saying, this is a quote again from your staff, this project will serve to enhance the state of the site through renaturalization in accordance with municipal and provincial policy frameworks, as well as the Rouge National Urban Park Management Plan. So you've had a submission saying, well, this is not consistent with those plans. My understanding, and I've been involved in all of these plans, is in fact it is. Your staff agree with that. This proposal before you, this rezoning application that's before you today, is consistent with the Rouge Park Management Plan. It's consistent with the Rouge National Urban Park Management Plan. It's consistent with your provincial policy statements. It's consistent with the Greenbelt Plan, and it is consistent with your area-specific policies on this. In terms of the rezoning, I want to bring to your attention as well as that, again, in terms of the ecological impact here. If you look at the actual parking lot, which is going to be a green parking lot, but it's still a parking lot, and if you look at the hospital, which is still a building, even though it's going to have a green roof on it, that impermeable surface, we call it, that paved parking lot and the hospital, represents about 2% of the site. 2% of the site. So we've gone from a scenario where developers was wanting to build an estate subdivision to a scenario where we're going to have over 100,000 trees and shrubs planted in here. That's the same amount of trees and shrubs planted by our forestry department in 1 year. So I'm here as a strong supporter of the application. Thank you.
We're not going to miss this opportunity. I don't know if you remember when we first met. It was probably about 20 years ago at the YMCA, and at the time we had a long conversation about the Rouge Park. So you have been an advocate of the Rouge Park for a very long time. Maybe you can speak to that first.
Well, certainly, and I say it with great pride as a Scarborough resident who, when I was a teenager, used to go down to, we called them bush parties or beach parties down at the mouth of the Rouge. We would have bonfires, We would try to meet young women, and young women would try to meet us. We would sometimes go skinny dipping off the Rouge Beach, and that's when I was a teenager. I had no idea back then that when I was in my 20s, I and a friend of mine would hand draw the boundaries of this national park. This park was created through the sheer force of the grassroots of the people of Scarborough and the surrounding region. So when I think about this park, it's been a 30-year battle. When we first came here, some people said we were all crazy, but we've proven them wrong. We have Parks Canada investing $141 million in our community, in Scarborough and in Markham. $141 million we've brought to this community because of our efforts for the national park. So not only have we protected the national park, created the national park, we're bringing in vast, huge, like $141 million of funds from the federal government that wouldn't be in this city if it weren't for this park. And when you look at the Wildlife Center with its 40 full-time staff, 40 staff, I want those jobs to stay in Scarborough, and the 500 volunteers. And the 500 volunteers, well, they're volunteers and they don't get paid. What it allows them to do is young people in Scarborough, our young people in Scarborough need those entry-level positions, those volunteer experiences, so that they can go out and get jobs. I think this is the proper location. Mr. Robb, for example, said, well, maybe we could put this down at Leslie Street Spit. I've been to Leslie Street Spit. It's a beautiful spit. But it has thousands and thousands and thousands of people there every single weekend, biking and hiking and doing all the things that you do down at the Beaches Boardwalk area. It's just not the right site for it. Another suggestion was one of our works yards. Well, I think we as members of council, and many of us, I'm sure you've all been to a works yard. They're big, they're dirty, they're smelly, you have garbage trucks in them, you have snow plows in them, you have salters in them, you have street sweepers in there. That's where we load up on our diesel fuel for our vehicles. That is not a place for a wildlife center. So I've participated with the Toronto Zoo when I was on the zoo board and with the Conservation Authority staff over the years. We've looked high and low, and we think, and I personally believe, the best park for the largest wildlife hospital in Canada is in the largest urban park in Canada in our national park.
So I'm glad I started by saying we met at the gym, not at a bush party. And I'm glad that you've now also clarified that there's going to be young volunteers like us, instead of going to bush parties, could be spending our time at the Wildlife Center volunteering. Yes. So this is a plus for youth. But given your background then, do you feel that this Wildlife Center, I just want this to be crystal clear, is entirely compatible with the vision that folks like yourselves that have been advocating for this for so long, do you feel that the Toronto Wildlife Center is entirely compatible with that vision for Rouge Park?
Yes, absolutely. I'd also like to say I'm very proud that the City of Toronto gave direction and gave funding. That barn is about 150 years old. It's got a big hole in the foundation. It was about to come down. And in addition to the environmental environment there, the heritage that we have there, we have a cultural heritage of the first settlers that came to this country and settled this land that can be preserved there. So we're preserving a magnificent barn that was going to fall over if we didn't step in and protect it, and a beautiful heritage home that it's been lived in for, I think, again, about 150 years. So part of this proposal is consistent with all of our environmental policies, but also our cultural preservation policies as well. And again, I emphasize the tallest building on this site will be a barn. And I think that's a great way, that's very fitting, and I agree 100% with your staff. And I just want to say that your staff's last sentence of their 38-page report is, staff recommend that council support the approval of this application. I support it as well.
And my last question, can you speak to how you think that, like the educational opportunities that are here for youth and why that is incredibly important and good for Scarborough youth?
I think it's good for Scarborough youth and Scarborough in general because of those volunteer activities. I think all of us have held community picnics and skating parties and food drives, and we get young people coming in, and this is for some of them the first time they've ever volunteered, the first time they've been in a work environment before they go and work at a pizza place or at McDonald's. But the skills and the ability to go and say, I volunteered somewhere, is very important. And especially out in the Malvern area, that is a community that needs every job opportunity and every opportunity, volunteer opportunity that they can get. So again, I think it's good for Scarborough. The other thing, of course, you may have noticed, with the reality TV shows right now, this center, for example, now is being aired on TVO across the province of Ontario. It's on British television. This wildlife center, when they film all the wildlife rescues, will go around the world. And I'm going to be very proud to say to people in Europe or in Asia or in South America that this wildlife center is in Scarborough. I won't even say Toronto. I'll say this is in Scarborough, south of Steeles Avenue.
Beach parties, eh? Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, questions of staff. Councilor McGilvery.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear, like, this proposal is for rezoning, like, there's still a significant number of permits and applications that still have to proceed, and the Toronto Wildlife Center will not be able to move in for occupancy until it's been deemed safe. So can you just kind of clarify next steps?
Hello? Hi. Through you, Chair.
Yes.
In terms of next steps, you have before you zoning amendments to permit the wildlife and veterinary hospital. If those bylaws get enacted, there is that possibility for appellants or interested parties to appeal the decision of council to the local planning appeal tribunal. If there are no appeals and the bylaws are enacted and excuse me, and are finalized, we will work with the center to address some of the outstanding site plan issues. In terms of permitting, there will be permits that would be required for the servicing component from the Ministry of the Environment and Conservation and Parks. So those permits would have to be reviewed by that ministry and then issued in order for water services to be permitted in terms of domestic use and in terms of fire supply.
So just to be crystal clear, occupancy will not be given unless the facility is deemed safe.
There is also another plan in terms of a temporary plan, and it's written in that report. In terms of the actual location for the main office in the Downsview, the TRCA's Downsview office, there are modules or portables that will be or slated to be relocated onto the site. During the construction of the facility, the TWC, or the Toronto Wildlife Center, is hoping to make use of those modules and work on a temporary basis out of that facility.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I know you mentioned with respect to part of the questioning from Councillor McKelvey regarding addressing the issues, but you heard the folks from the Cedarbray Golf and Country Club ask the very questions about setbacks, both for walking paths as well as for the parking location and so on. Those are some of the things that you'd consider as part of the overall community concerns and the process with respect to consultation?
Yes, it's a consideration that was given. And just as a reminder, in terms of the actual setbacks, in the zoning bylaw, the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the City of Toronto permits buildings to be set back from streets at 3 meters. We are actually requesting that council put on more restrictive setbacks for the buildings. We will work with the Cedarbray Golf Club with respect to the parking location, with respect to the landscape buffer, area, and we'll also consult with them in terms of the planting plan itself, so that it has a better interface or an improved interface between their operations as a golf course, as well as to provide an appropriate landscape buffer for the Wildlife Center.
Right. During the presentations by both Mr. Robb and Mr. DeBearmaker, there's some issues around provincial policies and policies that are city-owned policies. It appeared that Mr. Robb's comment were that they're inconsistent with respect to our policies and the provincial policy. Mr. DeBearmaker is suggesting that they are not, and so could you help me to understand which is correct or who's correct?
Okay. When we reviewed the application, we reviewed it in the context of the provincial planning framework. So we looked at the policies under the provincial policy statement. We looked at the Greenbelt Plan, and we looked at our own City of Toronto official plan. And everybody keeps talking about the ecological integrity and upholding that ecological integrity. It's a common policy theme at a provincial level and at a municipal level. And so it's been demonstrated that the criteria contained in our policies as well as the provincial policies have been met.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff? Speakers? Councilor McGilvery.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations and just kind of summarize what happened in January. So Toronto Council supported that the Toronto Wildlife Centre be issued a grant from the Toronto Region Conservation Authority to restore the barn and the farmhouse so that they can take up residence. So they are moving there this summer. I'm really excited that they're coming to our ward. They'll be operating a MASH unit in the interim, so every time I think of that, I do hear the theme song. But this motion today really does create the zoning that's necessary for them to move into a more permanent solution. And it will take some time until that permanent solution happens. So I am urging everybody today to support this so we can get on with a process that's been many years in the making. Included in the package today are letters of support from about 50 residents, as well as from Parks Canada and the Toronto Zoo. And you've also heard TRCA speak today about the involvement that they've had in this process and the governance path forward. The Toronto Wildlife Centre provides an important service where injured animals are cared for and introduced back to nature. I feel personally this is entirely compatible with the vision of residents and for the Rouge National Urban Park. The center has two really important objectives. The first is wildlife protection and preservation, and the second is public awareness and education. And to me, the thought that we could have a facility in Scarborough where youth could come out and learn about wildlife rehabilitation is a great thing. And if it gets them to stop going to bush parties in the Rouge Park and maybe to go and volunteer instead, I see that as an added bonus. And I certainly know many youth that would be excited at the opportunity to go and spend their time at such a facility. So I wholeheartedly support the Toronto Wildlife Centre's mission. I am very excited that they're coming to Ward 25 Scarborough Rouge Park, and I'm hopeful that my fellow councillors today will support me in this. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Okay. Recorded vote, please. In support, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor McGilvery, Councillor Lai, Councillor Thompson. Unanimous. Thank you. All right. Okay. I held 4.7. I'm willing to release it following staff recommendations. Folks, let's take the conversations outside, please. 4.7, I move staff recommendations. All right. 4, against, carried. 4.8, we do have a speaker, and the speaker is Mrs. Rhoda Potter, President, Agincourt Village Community Association. Yeah, so I'm going to ask her if she can. Ms. Potter, good morning. 4.7 and 4.8, you're looking to speak to both of them, but since they're side by side, would it be the same deputation that would like to make for
4.8
both?
and 4.9.
Sorry, 4.8 and 4.9. Would
Yes,
they be the
I'd
same
like to group them
deputation?
together if I could.
You want to speak together on that one?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take them as a package. Please, ma'am, go ahead.
Thank
5
you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I'm president of Agincourt Village Community Association, and I want to speak about the proposed development for Cowdrey Court, the proposed development for Kennedy Road, and the proposed development for Village Green Square. And I realize this is the beginning of all of this, but I'd like to get this out there because this community is being inundated with development. And this development, all of these developments are within our association boundaries. Today, I will speak only of the present and future traffic gridlock at Agincourt Road, or at Kennedy Road, 401 Shepherd Avenue, and the impact of the lack of efficient public transportation and connectivity. And all of this development fringes, impacts the traffic, the connectivity in this area. I want to give you a little history. On Village Green Square at Metrogate, which is presently 4 towers of 40 floors, that has been built. The 5th tower is under construction. That is within the area where I talk about the Village Green Square. These residents have only one exit by car or by foot to Kennedy Road. There is no bicycle lane. These 5 condominiums were built on the premise that a subway station for the Shepherd subway, which was to connect to the Scarborough Civic Center and to the Stouffville Corridor, soon to be Smart Track, GO transit area. This was according to the Agincourt secondary plan. That subway was never built. Next, a fully funded Shepherd LRT was to be built along Shepherd Avenue. That never happened. The funding was allocated to Finch LRT, Finch West LRT. Yes, you will say there is an Agincourt GO station north of Cowdrey Court and Village Green Square. It is more than a kilometer away with intermittent sidewalk accessibility, no bicycle lanes, TTC delayed by traffic, and no parking after 7:30 a.m. Just north of Cowdrey Court and Village Green Square, the proposed Agincourt Mall redevelopment with 5,000 condominium units at Kennedy Road and Shepherd Avenue, where they will be located. The traffic studies completed by this developer indicate 74% of the traffic on Kennedy Road and 60% of the traffic on Shepherd Avenue drives through the community. What is their destination? 401 Highway, 905 area north, and 905 to the east. Our community is a drive-through. According to 42 Police Division, Kennedy Road and Shepherd is identified as one of the 3 top highest accident rate for vehicles and pedestrians every month in 42 Division. What will happen when you add many more residents to the immediate area that already has traffic congestion and lacks safe pedestrian pathways, cycle lanes, and efficient public transportation connectivity? Why are Scarborough North residents treated differently than Leslie and Shepherd residents, where Concord Place condominiums are being built after 2 subway stations, Bazarian and Leslie Station, as well as Oreo GO Station, were already in place? Why are Scarborough North residents treated differently than Don Mills and Shepherd residents, where the increase in condominiums happened after the Don Mills station, subway station was in place? Why are the Scarborough North residents treated differently than Bayview and Shepherd residents, where the increase in condos happened after the Bayview station was in place? The negative mobility impacts of Cowdray Court, Kennedy Road, and Village Green Square condominium developments on the existing community, as well as on the future residents, are tremendous. My focus today has been only on the need for improved public transportation and pedestrian cyclist connectivity to ease the present traffic gridlock. Please, Scarborough councillors, direct city planning to consider, plan, and build a mobility hub at Kennedy Road, 401 Shepherd Avenue. Please, we the residents implore you, the councillors, to ensure a subway, Shepherd subway, connected to the Stouffville Corridor GO Train Smart Track and safe pedestrian cyclist community access before you authorize any more condominium development at Kennedy Road and Shepherd 401 community. Thank you for the time to express Agincourt community's severe concerns regarding mobility within and through our North Scarborough community. Thank you.
To say to us before we move with this development?
I do believe that this development needs special scrutiny given the wider impact on the total community. I've only talked about transportation here. It includes infrastructure. At this point, I would invite you to take a shower in my house while the washing machine is running below. I would ask you about being able to walk, senior citizens being able to connect within this community. The school system, I'm a former elementary school principal. Highly love to see development. However, we need to seriously look at this particular development. Thank you.
Ms. Potter, would you say that with the development of, I believe, another 8 towers, and probably there's 6 already, the Tridel, there's 3 that are happening in front of the Tridel, yes. 2 in front of the hotel and 5 above. Would you say that we definitely need an additional school down there to address the needs of our future constituents?
Absolutely. At this point, those children in the Tridel development are being taken by their parents to Linwood Gate, which is in the Allenford area south of Shepherd Avenue. There, they already have 2 extra portables. Agincourt Public School, which is just north of this development, already has 3 portables. Tamil Shanter Elementary School, which is just north of the Agincourt Mall redevelopment, already has 9 portables. I rest my case.
Would you, the recommendation is that we consult with 120 meters. Would you be supportive if we consult more widely?
Absolutely. These developments impact the wider community. I will also mention that Agincourt is on your list for heritage conservation. Little communities that need to stay intact. We're not against development, but we see the huge impact, especially connectivity, to be able to move within this particular community.
Ms. Potter, the last question that I have for you, this is not only affecting Scarborough Agincourt, Ward 22. Certainly, I think it also affecting Ward 23, my colleague, Councillor Lai.
Absolutely. It's also affecting Ward 2025. Scarborough North entirety is basically being affected by this particular development. We have an opportunity here to create a mobility hub if we put all the pieces in place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the deputant?
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions of staff? Okay. I move staff recommendations, and it states in there that, and I read, Notice of the community consultations meeting be given to the landowners and residents within 120 meters of the application, and to additional residents, institutions, owners to be determined in consultation with the ward councillor. We heard from Mrs. Potter and from others that wider consultation is requested. I've requested staff to look at M1W, M1V, M1S, M1T for consultations at the postal code, so we'll go everywhere from Victoria Park almost all the way over to McCown, I believe, north of the 401. That's what I'm moving, folks. In favor? Opposed? Carried. So this was for 4.8 and 4.9. Okay. We take it as a package? Because they're simultaneously? Okay. You want to separate? Okay, 4.8? All in favor? Okay. 4.9, all in favor? Carried. Which one is that, 4.10? Okay. 4.14, Councillor Lai.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move staff recommendation for this
Okay.
item, please.
Any questions of the mover? Any questions of the mover? 4.14.
I'd like to move for staff recommendation.
Questions of staff? Speakers? Okay. All those in favor? Carried. 4.15 then? 4.16, we do have one speaker. I believe it's Lucy Campbell. Come on down, please. Ms. Campbell, whenever you're ready, we'll give you 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lucy Campo, and I'm a resident of Tanis Crescent. I'm here today to present my request to move forward on city staff proposal for item SC 416, standing prohibition in Ward 25, Scarborough Rouge Park. Thank you for allowing me to present my safety concerns with a public right-of-way located on Tanis Crescent. My family and I have been part of this community since September of 2006. We had our home custom made to accommodate my father's permanent disability after he suffered a stroke in 2004. My husband and I wanted to give my parents the opportunity to live at home with us and their 2 grandchildren. Over the years, road congestion has increased significantly on our street. Our street, although a dead end, has a lot of traffic by residents, visitors, and others, and parking on the bend of the street has become a daily safety concern. In 2014, I was involved in a head-on collision at the specific corner. Fortunately, no one was injured. On a daily basis, we have many near misses at this corner and public right-of-way. When a vehicle is parked on this bend, it is extremely dangerous and provides no sight lines around the bend. It forces the vehicle to travel on the wrong side of the road and putting those occupants and those of oncoming traffic in danger. The safety of our residents is paramount, and by the City of Toronto approving this proposal on Tanis Crescent for no standing anytime regulation will make the public right-of-way safer for all the families and visitors of Tanis Crescent. I decided to contact 311 in January of this year, and with the swift assistance of city staff, both Al Burrows and Marco Oinonen, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, I'm sorry, of Transportation Services were extremely accommodating to agree to review our street and our concerns. I had a positive experience with these gentlemen, and they supported the proposal that no standing anytime regulations should be installed on both sides of Tanis Crescent. In addition, I contacted Councillor Jennifer McKelvey's office, and after her and her staff's review of the street, they too agreed with this proposal. This was a positive experience with all city staff. I brought with me 7 pictures demonstrating what we live with on a regular basis around this bend. The residents of Tanis are fortunate to all have 4 parking spots on their property, 2 in the driveway and 2 in the garage. Some residents who do not have sidewalks have the opportunity for 6 vehicles. In addition, we have plenty of parking spots for guests on our street. The bend is not a safe option for anyone on any instance. I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to express my concerns today, and I hope you approve this proposal put forth by city staff and myself. Thank you. No problem. Thank you.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
I move that Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as bylaws bills 411 to 417 prepare for the March 2019 meeting 4 of the Community Council.
I move that Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Scarborough Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 4 on March 19th, 2019.